Watched the monster's jagged claws inch slowly out from under the bed. "I won't let him touch you again, I promise," the monster assured me as my dad crept into the room. It took 5 minutes and a screwdriver, but the cap finally came loose with a satisfying pop. Now for the other knee. I took one last gulp of air as I continued sinking helplessly into the quicksand. I opened my eyes under the sand just to see hundreds of bodies frozen in place, their eyes blinking frantically at me. "We are going to play hide and seek," she screamed with glee. I hung my head as I had lost too much blood to go looking for all the things she'd cut off of me. I clutched the negative pregnancy test in my shaking hand, willing it to say something different. As I watched my swollen stomach contort and bulge with the shape of unfamiliar limbs, I had to accept that whatever was growing in me, it wasn't a baby. I was browsing through LiveLeak with my friend Dave when we came across a particularly disturbing video posted a few years ago. It wasn't the fact that Dave actually died in the video that bothered me so much, as the fact that I watched myself die as well. I did not expect to find a zipper underneath my daughter's hair when I was checking her for lice. I certainly didn't expect to feel one when I rubbed the back of my own head. "Count backwards from 10, said the dentist. As I slipped into unconsciousness, I saw the hand that held the drill drift from my mouth to my eye. As I watch her roll peacefully over in her sleep, I smile and think of how lucky I am to know what true love feels like. It may look like an accident to others, but I know she leaves that tiny crack in the blinds of her window just for me. After months of tracking him down, I tortured and killed him in the same thoughtless way that he killed his victims. I despise copycat serial killers that don't know how to imitate all of my details precisely. I told my boyfriend to bend over the swimming pool to get a better view of my pet. It's easier to get new boyfriends than it is to buy food for a 10-foot crocodile. Every night this week, I've been woken by the sound of dirt bikes. Spent the next day, exhausted, tying a steel wire across the track at neck height. It's not true that your pet cat will eat your face off when you're dead if they're hungry enough. As I lie on the kitchen floor, paralyzed after a fall, my recently fed feline didn't even wait until I was dead. As Cinderella's ugly stepsisters looked upon her beauty at the ball, they realized that she had to be put to much better use than just cleaning. After that night, the sisters allowed many men to visit her each day, but none came with a glass slipper, only money. Gardening was the last thing I thought my wife would take up after our daughter went missing. But when our dog went digging in the flower bed and found a bone, I realized why. My date took me on a cruise on his fancy glass-bottom boat. I didn't know what was scarier, the bloated hands pressed against the glass from below, or their warnings as they pointed to my date. I learned to love my body the way it is. After all, it was so difficult to find a suitable host. Well, the test came back, and the growth in your chest isn't cancer. We don't know what it is actually, and cancer doesn't generally try to hide from the scan. "You're so lucky to have such a sweet boyfriend," they say, and I smile. But looking him in the eyes, I can tell I didn't smile wide enough. Payback for her jump scaring me, I thought as I lunged at the shower curtain and screamed like a madman. My laughter was short-lived as I heard the scream, the short slipping sound, and the sickening crack followed by silence. As I laid in bed, ready to sleep, I heard the cat that we rescued from an abusive household scratching on the other side of the closed door, asking to be let in. As I got up to open the door, I remembered. The cat's previous owners had declawed him. It always fascinated me how deep-sea predators use bioluminescence to lure in their prey. It's a shame that humans never consider this when they go into the light on their deathbed. Being buried alive was so common in the Victorian era, they tied one end of a string to the corpse and another to a bell, so the corpse could ring it if they woke up, hence the saying, "saved by the bell." As I lay in the dark wasting the last of my oxygen reciting useless facts, I wish some traditions were as alive as I am. "Come John, look at our baby boy, he's so beautiful." I finally snapped and got on my knees, crying and pleading for my wife to stop digging up our stillborn's grave. "And what would you like for Christmas, little boy?" said Santa as I sat on his lap at the mall. My little brother back, I replied as I stare at the man who I saw lure him into his van last summer. Seeing a trail of footprints where there shouldn't be one is never a good sign. Houston, we have a problem. I tried to scream, begging the murderer to stop as he took off my daughter's skin and wore it himself. I could see the horror in his eyes when it rapidly fused with his own skin. Then he smiled at me and said, "I like this guy, Daddy." I see so many of these videos of people putting rubber bands around a watermelon to make it pop, and it's usually about 400. I thought a human head would be much more durable, but it only took 342. When the insect started eating through to my brain, I was horrified, but now I realize that I love my little friend and I would do anything to protect him. You will too when you stop fighting and let me put this in your ear. The doctor hid his face in his hands, now crying. His screams filled the hospital that truly didn't have any more room. Humans, no matter how injured, old, or sick, just wouldn't die anymore. I waved a tearful goodbye as my lover left the bunker, promising he would be back as soon as he could with some food for me and our newborn baby. But his phone fell out of his pocket when he was climbing the ladder to leave, and with how many notifications he's gotten from family and friends in the last hour, I'm starting to wonder if there was ever a nuclear war at all. They always said, "You are what you eat." Considering the mess he'd just made, Pinocchio was desperately hoping it was true. I finally mustered up the courage to tell my wife about my necrophilia fetish. Her look of shock slowly turned to horror as I tightened the belt around her neck. As I looked out the window, I saw a man just standing there. That would have been a lot less creepy if I didn't live on a boat. The clown twisted and twirled and twiddled, eventually making a dog for the young mother. Staring at her mangled baby's body, she silently forced a smile to prevent the clown from making balloon animals for or from her other children. As the stillborn baby lay on the table, the doctor remarked at how the lesions covering it looked so much like bite marks. The mother's rising screams brought them back to the reality that they were delivering twins. We have no idea what it means, but we all noticed it. The sun flickered today. It seemed like a sadistic cliche waking up in agony in a tub of ice with my side stitched up. I assumed that they had taken an organ, but the movement under my skin confirmed that they gave me something instead. My date has gone to the restroom to freshen up, so while she's away I've emptied the contents of this vial into her drink. She returns, drinks from the glass, then suddenly bursts into flames, unaware that I've laced her cocktail with holy water. I work at a crematorium, loading bodies into the furnace. You'd be surprised how many times you hear screams after the furnace door closes. Our new roommate has tried to kill everyone in my family. So tonight, while he's asleep, we're all gonna crawl up his nose to spin our webs and lay eggs in his sinuses. They all ask how many kids came to our house for trick-or-treat. None of them ask how many left. "We found your daughter," the officer said as he drew an X on the map. And then he drew another, and another, and another, and another. I blink rapidly as my boyfriend and I smile at the police officer. I just pray he knows Morse code. I watch my father collapse to the floor weeping as I explain that his wife of 20 years had been killed in a car accident. And due to his dementia, I get to watch his heart break anytime I want a little bit of entertainment. I always found the idea of Batman to be laughable. Just to be safe, I shot the kid too. I spent every minute of winter searching for my missing daughter. When summer came, I learned that the killer had a twisted sense of humor as the snowman in my front yard melted away. My daughter is crying in her room because of a nightmare, so I went to tuck her in. As I approached her room, I realized that the cries were being looped. 10% of the world was killed by the COVID-19 virus. The other 90% were killed after they came back. I have proof that the moon landing isn't fake. What is fake, however, is the believed fact that 3 human beings came back. Years ago, my best friend and I made a pact that if we were still single at 35, we would get married to each other. As I stare in horror at my friend standing over my husband's bludgeoned body, I finally realized that he always planned to ensure that a single part took place. The new neighbor stood at my door explaining that he was a registered sex offender. I stood frozen in horror, unable to comprehend that he didn't even recognize me.